Thanks, everybody. We know we're between you and cocktails. It's an interesting place to be, so thanks for everybody's time. As I said, I'm Mitch Cristol. I lead the beverage vertical for InMarket. I'm here with Ed, Chief Marketing Officer, Marketing and Innovation Officer for Diageo.
Thanks, Mitch. Hello, everyone. Well, thank you to everyone for coming today. I know it was all done through brand Innovators, but we really appreciate you coming here. I always liken it to, we like people sharing, it's kind of like our home. It's like if you spend lots of time and effort having a nice home, you want people to share it, you want to invite people around, you want to have drinks. We do it the same way. So you are in our home, we have good drinks, we have excellent drinks, we think we've got some of the best in the world. So we're delighted that you're here. You've had to listen to quite a lot of people. I've been a bit in and out, but I've listened to a lot of it and there's been some great stuff. I'm not promising you this last half hour is going to be any good. But if you look over there, you can start to think about what you're going to have at 4:30 and what cocktail you're going to have. And the guys behind the bar are awesome. They are genuinely world class in terms of drinks, as you would expect.
Well, to keep it moving so we don't delay them from the drinks, as you reflect back on today, what's your biggest takeaways from the day?
Well, I think it's just been a really healthy conversation around sort of inclusivity, the world we live in, and as marketers and brand builders is a better term than marketers. I think marketers becomes sort of slightly interesting term nowadays. What that means for us in the world we live in, and I think also in a world which is, just look at the pace of change in the world at the moment is so great. You look what's going on in the world politically, all the stuff that's happening, what's happening today. In a world which is so fast changing and everything like that, being able to just really knowing what your brand is, what it stands for, what kind of dialogue, what sort of conversation you want to have out there, and then how you want to show up in the world. That's the important thing. And being true to what it is, not being blown by the wind, but also knowing how you are true to what's going on in the world and understanding that. And I think as part of that, it is a world where inclusivity, diversity is absolutely critical. And there are forces out there which make it at times a little bit more difficult. But being true to what you believe in as a brand and what it is, but also recognising that it's a funny old world out there, and you need to, at times, course correct a little bit, adjust a little bit, and be agile, all that sort of stuff, basically. So I've taken out those good days, great conversations about some amazing work that's happening and some great people.
Yeah, I think one of the things that excited me the most in something that's been marketing in the beverage space for a long time is that inclusivity is at the forefront and it's part of the marketing campaign. It's no longer an afterthought of like, hey, we needed a Hispanic execution, we needed an African American execution, or anything else. It's part of the overall campaign from the get-go. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure people have said this, but I think the days of having a sort of separate multicultural team doesn't really work because our job is to talk to all America, and our job globally is to talk to all consumers around the world. That's what we want to do. We want to talk, in our case, to people who enjoy drinking beverage alcohol, who are adults, obviously, and how do we get to them? And then we need to make sure we're getting the right message to the right people. And it depends on what brand it is, but we need to be doing that. But we need to be understanding, empathetic, consumer savvy, insightful, all that good stuff, obviously. But that's what we need to do. And in the world which is ever changing, as I said, we desperately need to do that. But we need to make sure we are landing the right message and we're empathetic. And understanding that the world is changing a lot, it really is. You can start, someone mentioned earlier, I think Jennifer was talking a bit about Smirnoff Tamarind. A brand like Smirnoff Tamarind, it's easy to say, oh, this is great, it was launched in Mexico, and we just want Mexicans to drink it. But actually, if you think about the broader trends that are going on, the trend is much more around food, around spicy food, about what's happening. That's not exclusive to Mexican restaurants. We often talk about what grew tequila in this country. It's really interesting what grew. There's a whole variety of reasons. One part of it is food. There's a huge big trend around food and different foods that have come to this country. The trend around Mexican food has been the fastest growing food over the last few years in the US. What drink do you tend to have when you go to a Mexican restaurant? Not to be having a margarita, not exclusively a margarita. What goes in a margarita? Tequila. So the rise of Mexican food, that's not just Mexicans going to Mexican restaurants. I was at a Mexican restaurant last night, and there were about 3 Mexicans in there. And the rest, So patently, it's how different cultures emerge, different trends emerge, then how that disseminates more broadly into culture. is what's interesting. So I think it's recognising what's going on, what the different consumer groups is, but what are those underlying trends which are really interesting? What are those elements of culture that are coming into different cultures? And you start to see the morphing of cultures coming together and people embracing different elements of culture. And that I think starts to become really fascinating actually. And then you start to see why categories, so take the case of tequila here. It's all about the trend around food trends, which is really driving it. Wellness trends, what people want, it's those trends. And those trends actually cross different demographics, they cross different ethnicities, just how people grab hold of that. So I think it's a broad statement, but actually one of the, I think the key things is understanding what's going on in different communities. So if you take that in the Mexican community in that case, but what of that is going to start to permeate more broadly across the country and taking those trends, which I think is really important. And food, I think, is fascinating, and for our industry, it's fascinating to watch those trends and what's going and what the implications are for us as an industry as well.
And because those trends have been evolving so quickly and spreading, has that been greatly affecting the business for Diageo?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you just got to. We look at sort of broad trends around what's that, drinking trends, behavioural trends. I'll come back to sort of the broader term inclusivity. But I mean, if you look at our industry, when people drink has changed fundamentally. So if you went back 10, 15 years ago, people drank much more late at night. They do less of that nowadays. That part of that is just culture change. It's just different people go to generational thing. You've got a Gen Z generation who actually want to go to bed early, which is great, by the way. It makes a lot of sense. So you go to bed early, you get up early, you feel better. People drink a little bit more earlier because they'd rather have a couple of drinks earlier, and then sort of finish the night, moderate, go to bed and feel good. There's a lot of stuff, so that's all changing. Is that a cultural thing? Yes, it's a cultural thing, it's a generational thing, which you have to get over. Part of that is cultural as well, in terms of how people adapt different cultures, interact in our case with alcoholic beverages. So I think what you have to do is, like any good marketer, just understand the shifts that you see and adapt your plans across your brands to what you see happening.
Perfect. When we spoke last week, when we were talking, you talked about how marketing starts from within, cascades out, with driving Diageo's values and support of communities. Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so if you take a step back on Diageo, what are we about? And it's funny, a lot of our competitors talk about this as well. But I mean, our purpose, just to start with our purpose is about celebrating life every day, everywhere. And we really believe in that, and that is for everyone. So it really is that everyone is enjoying our brand. We want people to enjoy our brands responsibly. As I said earlier, we want to market to all adults who are receptive to a new drink. We want to do that. So it really is everyone. And we want our business to reflect that as well. So the makeup of our business, our teams, how we look internally, who we work with, also has to look at that. So, because we absolutely recognise that if we look like society and act like society, we're going to do a better job of responding to society and making sure that our brands show up correctly in society. So it's very important that we have the right team. It's very important that I have the right team in terms of in place, and we have the right mix of backgrounds, personalities, types, all of that sort of stuff. It's absolutely critical, and that cultural understanding and that sort of just understanding of what's happened is really important. And then that we learn from each other. I think that's what's really important as well. I think it's really important that you have the diversity of talent, and having that around is how we all learn from each other, which is absolutely critical. So having that type of learning culture is essential, because then that enables us to get out and build better brands, basically, and understand how we target those brands more effectively. So but at the heart of Diageo is a deeply inclusive culture. Our former CEO, who sadly passed last year, Ivan, just deeply believed in it. I think he was a visionary in the space in terms of what he helped to create in Diageo. We've been lucky in terms of the recognition that we've had, in terms of just the basic level, the makeup of our executive teams, etc., and all of that. And we really believe it translates through into how our brands show up in the world and how we bring our brands to life, basically.
And I think you give some examples of how that's brought to life for some of your brands. Some of them have been talked about a bit today, but I think our first one that we wanted to talk about was the Tequila Don Julio campaign with the Don Julio 70 of Cristol and our artist integration.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, I think if you talk about culture, Don Julio is a brand that was really built in culture, that's the first thing. And that's one of these great statements that marketing people make, and you sort of think, you should sound like that at BS. If I said that to my mother, she'd say, what do you mean by that? So at one level, before I come to that, something like Don Julio in 1942, it's 20 years in the making. People say, why is it really cool, and why do people want to drink 1942? It's because we were all the right parties. You know, for 20 years, we were just at the right parties. It's really simple as that. All the celebrities who drink tequila now and have their own brands, you know, The Rock and everyone, the Kardashians, you name it, they drank 42 because we kind of worked with them and gave it to. That's how you build brands in this space. That's how you seem to be the right. But you do it in a way. The word authentic is being used a lot. You can. I'm loath to use it because it can be sort of misused a lot. But you show up in the right places. You make sure the brands are there. You do it in a way which kind of feels right for the occasions. You don't want to look like you're overselling. That's how you show up in the right places. So I think you need to take that to our partnerships that we did on something like in 1942. Were very real. We were supportive. So if you can support people, rather than just towing up and being flashy and saying, hey, we want to be there, how do you support people and how do you help people? And then make sure that our brands are present and people are enjoying them. And that's kind of how we built 1942. Massive focus on DJ culture. So I'll come back to the Willie Chavarria thing in a sec. Massive culture. How do you support that community? How do you help it? How do you support up-and-coming DJs? And also you work with all the big DJs so they can go on stage and wave for the Club 42 like that and go, woo, woo, woo. And everyone goes, that's really cool. And off you go. Or something better than that, cooler than that. I'm not really a major DJ, you can probably tell. But you know, how do you support the community? So the key point is, when you're getting into culture, you've got to understand who do you want to be with, what's the community you want to be with, how do you support that community, and how do you show up in the right way? That's what you need to do. So in the case of like the Willie Chavarria thing, I'd say, why do we do that partnership? So it's really simple, because say Don Julio's roots, so the reason I went off on that little digression, are about a brand that builds itself in culture, shows up brilliant in culture. What Willie's doing is, and what's Don Julio all about? Don Julio is, again, a low to use the word authentic, but is a truly authentic Mexican tequila. It was founded by a guy, Don Julio Gonzalez, who was a visionary, obsessive, crappy business person, amazing at sort of making tequila, obsessed about making the most extraordinary tequila. That's what he loved to do. You know, he used to wander around, he'd talk to the agave plants, something like that. He was just a nerdy fascination with making extraordinary tequila. The bottles were done for his brand, all sorts of amazing stories. So that's what he was about. So we got this amazing tequila, basically, deeply authentic. So then you go, where do you want to show up? We want to be sort of very Mexican. What do you want to be when you sort of, you know, what's the partnership with someone like a Willie Chavarria? It's like, you know, he's one of the first Mexicans to really break down Fashion Week here, breaking through. And then what's really interesting, back to when I touched on morphing of cultures, what's fascinating is he's not just turning up and being, whilst he'll start a show with a mariachi band. Basically, it's all about streetwear. So how you take Mexican culture, fuse it with streetwear that's going on here. And that's the point about the fusion of cultures, where we can get too simplistic about, you know, different cultures, and, you know, it's only one culture enjoyed by one type of people. People are, you know, we're seeing this morphing going on of different cultures, which I think is fascinating. So if you see, so our job with a Mexican brand is to support a Mexican artist who's coming over here, who's morphing into streetwear. It's a brilliant collaboration with Adidas, which is super cool. So you're taking that to that space. And then, candidly, what's our role in that? It's to support him, to be there, and then make sure that everyone has a bloody good time. So, you know, our brands are there. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're a drinks brand. So we want a positive association, tick. We're with a cool guy, tick. We don't want to be, you know, intrusive. We want to be there in the right way. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity, if they choose to drink, to have a Don Julio 70, which, by the way, is the most extraordinary Cristalino and the founder of the Cristalino category. Little plug. So long story short, winning culture, know what you stand for, know how you want to partner in culture. You've got to know how you want to partner in culture. You've got to be, yes, be authentic about it, overused word at the moment. Know how you support the communities you want to be with, and then be very clear about how you show up in a way which is supportive. And then also understand what your role is, you know, at the end of it. What do you want to get out of it? In that case, you want to get nice mentions, you want to be liked, you want people to enjoy your brands. That's what great partnership, that's how you show up in culture is all about. That's how you build the brands. The other thing I think in culture is interesting, just before you ask me a question, I talked about it the other day, is, and this is the obvious statement, is, you know, as human beings, we talk about this, we're 99.9% the same. But we grow up in different places. I've been lucky to live in many different countries around the world. I've been in America for 25 years, you can tell I'm British, but only I spent much more time living here. So a lot of what we're shaped by is, the influences we have often when we're young, or the influences we have when we sort of move. So it's understanding those influences and what happens, and then how those influences morph across the place. So we were talking, I think the other day about, I lived in Mexico years ago, loved it. That's when I became a fanatical mango eater. Because this is amazing mangoes. I grew up not eating mangoes because, when you grow up in the whatever, in England, the mangoes were pretty crappy in those days, obviously, they're not very good. But you start to get into it, start to flavour trends, start to morph, you get experiences and you take it, and we're looking at it. So think about what we then take that into our drinks. It's really interesting because you're starting to get more people as people move around the world, as different trends move, as people go, you've got this movement of people, it starts to just become more interesting. And people start to experiment more and try different things. And that's really what happens because fundamentally, we're all pretty similar. But we've been shaped by the early experiences we have. As we start to get out more, and the more open-minded people are, the more they want to experiment with different cultures, the more interesting it is. So we talked about the other day about Buchanan's Pineapple. Buchanan's Pineapple is a great example of a brand. So if you live in Scotland or you live in Britain and you believe that whiskey should only be drunk, neat and on the rocks and maybe with Coke. And it's the mixing of the flavours is an aberration. But we did and this isn't radical, but we did we've done a flavoured Scotch whisky, Buchanan's, which is a big brand in Latin America. Buchanan's is a fascinating brand because James Buchanan, this guy about 100 years ago, was this, again, sort of British eccentric, and he loved horses, and he went to Latin America and basically built his brand in Latin America. He used to go down to Argentina, Mexico. So the brand is basically only sold in Latin America. He used to sell it in the House of the Parliament, and then he gave up on that because, I don't know, got a bad deal, something else came out. Anyway, so bottom line, this brand is big in Latin America. Latin American, big whiskey culture. How do they drink it in Latin America? Really simple. They drink it, if you go to Mexico, you drink a bucanita. What's a bucanita? It's Scotch and pineapple. You won't get that if you're back at my mum and dad's. You're not going to get a bucanita. It's highly unlikely. You might get a little, you might get open on the rocks. But you get bucanita. So what do we do? So this is so not rocket science. We go, give the people what they want. So we did a flavoured, pineapple-flavoured whiskey. It's absolutely flying. Because you can now do a bucanita plus if you want to put pineapple on pineapple. It's great. And other people are getting into it. Is it just being enjoyed by Mexicans? No, of course it's not. It's being enjoyed by people who actually want to experiment and get the flavours, everyone different flavoured drinks and great tasting drinks. So it's about understanding the roots of a brand, where the brand is, the cultural roots of those brands, the cultural roots that the consumers are at, getting the insight from them, developing something which is interesting for that consumer base, and then seeing it extend out more broadly into other consumers, basically. And that's I think, our role.
And so successful that I believe it's the spirits category.
Yeah, we won loads of awards for it. I mean, yeah, that's thanks. Yeah, thank you.
So
it's not rocket science. If you go to it, what we did, this is, it really isn't.
Yeah, and you spoke a little bit before about Sure Enough Cameron, and that it wasn't just for Hispanic consumers. What role did inclusivity play as you were crafting that and coming up with that variant and deciding to take that beyond just the Hispanic market?
Well, basically, the brief is, whilst it had tamarind, obviously, big flavour in Mexico, and a popping flavour. So if you look at big flavours, there's certain flavours, pomegranate was popping a little while ago. So we always look at what are the big flavours, what's popping, and how do you get them into culture. And then some will always be bigger than others because actually some flavours just naturally have broader levels of appeal. But I think if you come back to the consumer, who's a consumer, the frame on tamarind is interesting, because back to my point earlier. Tamarind could be, you could say, tamarind, we started in Mexico to learn, so we just want, look, there's a lot of Mexicans in this country, we just want basically first, second, third generation Mexicans to do this, and thank you very much, and we'll sell the following. If you frame it as it's for spicy lovers, then you've suddenly opened up entirely, because spicy lovers cross, basically all ethnicities, age groups, and like. There are spicy lovers and there are spicy haters. It's as simple as that. If you frame it as the world of spicy lovers, a huge opportunity. And so that's what we did. We took it, and then you've got a flavour which is kind of cool and on trend, and then you essentially market it as appealing to people who like spice. And then that really is just going to appeal more broadly. So that's kind of what we did with Stir Enough Tamarind, as simple as that. We started narrowly, and as we started to get that messaging right, we rolled it around, and it's been really successful.
And so you're always looking at expanding your portfolio. And so last week you announced the acquisition of Ritual non-alcoholic spirits. Can you talk a little bit about that move and how inclusivity falls into that portion of expanding your portfolio?
Yeah, sure. Actually, there was a question earlier which Christine, our VP of Planning, who was here earlier, did a good job of fielding, but maybe I'll start with that. So we really believe in moderation. This industry has been around for thousands of years. I really believe in it. But we generally want people to enjoy drinks responsibly. We don't want people to go and have too many and feel terrible the next day. It's just not good. It's not good. I've done it for years. So I try not to drink 3 days a week. That's my goal. If I do that, that's 150 days a week. Yeah, not drinking, that's like 3 months. That means I can still drink in January and October. That's my strategy. It's a good one. There you go. I have AFDs, alcohol-free days. Mark kills me on the bar because I go, I'm not drinking. He goes, you drink? Just told me, are you drinking today? Yes. I'm with you guys. So what's going on? Household penetration in alcohol, let me take a step back, is pretty much flat. It's about 190 odd million people in this country who drink. That's pretty flat. Spirits are doing pretty well. Beer's going down. Wine's going down. So that's one level. Next thing, people go, Gen Z aren't drinking as much. Household penetration of Gen Z in alcohol is the same as millennials of the same generation, so if you roll back. They just don't drink quite as much. So they drink a bit earlier, during the daytime, and they pace themselves more. So what they're also doing, which is smart, whereas there were generations beforehand, so my generation, who would be drinking cheaper stuff or whatever and getting stuff in or whatever it might be, they're drinking better. So actually being more judicious about where they spend the money. So actually consumption is positive. So if you go, is this a group of people who are open to the category? Yes. Are they having candidly a more adult relationship with the category? Yes, they are. That's really good. So what you're seeing is positive levels of penetration, shifts within the category, which are really happening, and a shift towards moderation, which is really good. So pick the moderation theme up. When we started to get involved with non-alc about 10 years ago, our strategy was all about targeting people who wanted to drink on occasions when they don't want to drink. So tonight is Tuesday, I will have a drink on Tuesday. But often you might say, it's Tuesday, I don't want to drink. Or I've got a big meeting tomorrow morning, I've got a big presentation, or I'm doing the week off, or I'm pregnant, or whatever, I'm driving, never drink and drive, give up, So, but we weren't targeting people who weren't drinking. We're not going to go, that's so funny, we're not going to go to countries where people aren't drinking and say this is a big opportunity. The strategy has always been about people who enjoy a drink, but on occasions when they don't want to drink, we really espouse that these are opportunities. Now, you could say, being cynical, aren't you just then trying to get people on those occasions when they don't drink? Of course we bloody well are, yeah, absolutely, because that's the opportunity. If people are doing a me strategy and saying, I've got 4 days where I have a drink and 3 days where I'm not, when they're not, I'd rather they drink our brands than someone else's brands. So that's just obvious, that's what we do. So that's it. So therefore, what are we trying to do? If you're out, so Tuesday night, and you're going out, we want to make sure that in non-alc spirits, we are the leader in non-alc spirits. So the first thing we did was buy Seedlip, which is up there on the top shelf. It wasn't on the top shelf, but it's on the top shelf, which we basically acquired. We started buying in 2016. And there's almost like 3 parts to non-alc, so it's a long answer, but I want to talk it through to explain inclusivity a little bit. That's about interesting spirit brands, non-alcoholic spirit brands, which have unique propositions. They're brilliant cocktails, and they're kind of like, you don't quite know what they are, you need to find out. They've got interesting ingredients. They're a bit like gins in that respect, different botanically ingredients, and they're cool. One day we need to have a better name for that. If anyone can come up with a better name than non-alc, that'd be great. I would say 400 years ago, rum appeared out of molasses and sugar, and they called it rum. Whiskey did from Whisker-Beth. We need a better name than non-alc. But that's it. Then you've got analog brands, which are basically my favourite spirit, the zeros, in new brands, and then you've basically got my favourite spirit or beer brand in a non-alc version. That's essentially it. We want to participate in all 3 areas. That's what we're trying to do. Seedlip is the first play, which is doing really nicely in the unique proposition area. Ritual, which we acquired last week, which we invested in when they were tiny in 2020, are basic analog brands, so a gin, a tequila, what have you, but with a unique proposition. Because a lot of consumers like new brands. The same way, look what happened in seltzers, new brands came in. And then we're doing stuff like Guinness Zero, which is absolutely flying. And by the way, if you like Guinness and you haven't drunk Guinness Zero, it's amazing. Do a test, drink the Guinness Zero next to regular Guinness. You will hardly know the difference. It's astonishingly good. So we're doing that. And then in Europe, where gin's bigger, we do a 0-0 and stuff like that and some other stuff. So we're touring with that. So Ritual really is all about basically our participation. It's now the lead non-alc spirit in the US. Seedless are number 2. We've got number 1 and 2. We've got a load of other stuff I can say, but I can't tell you what it is, which we're looking at in the pipeline. And we're doing great with Guinness Zero. And the point about inclusivity, to wrap it all up, is this is really about giving everyone, basically consumers broadly, the opportunity to have a great drink on occasions when they don't want to drink. In my mind, that's a bit about inclusivity. And then within that, we'll get very specific about who we're targeting, obviously, because it gives people more interesting options than, frankly, drinking sodas and other stuff that they were stuck with on those occasions. So that's what we're doing. So we feel really good about what we're doing in non-alc, and it's a huge part of our strategy going forward.
And I agree with you on Guinness 0-0. Absolutely fantastic.
Amazing, yeah. It took, by the way, it took us a long time. We had different iterations of it, so this stuff takes a while to do, but it's astonishingly good.
So one last question before we let everybody have some cocktails. For what you can talk about, as you look into next year or the second half of your fiscal year, what are you most excited about?
So I'm excited about, I think there's loads of opportunities. So to your point, you know, we've got an exciting consumer base. You think about the diversity in this market, so that's what I talk. I've already touched and lent a lot on the growth of the Hispanic consumer. So huge opportunities in terms of this diverse consumer base in the US, and actually it goes to lots of interesting pockets around the world as well. So I'm excited about the market we operate in. I'm excited about how we're evolving our portfolio to make sure we've got the right portfolio, the right fit for an ever-changing America, which is what we have to do. And I'm excited by how trying to make sure that we do brilliant brand building in terms of how our brands show up in culture, basically. Relevant for those consumers, targeted in the right way, but understanding those nuances between who we target and that sort of mashing of cultures, which I'm talking about as places where trends start, and then spotting when trends start, but then when they start to go into the mainstream. Because our job is, you know, we're not a niche business, we can't be niche. We need to start stuff still, but our job is then to scale stuff. So it's spotting where stuff is happening, where trends are starting, understanding where they are and doing that. And then I think the other piece is I'm excited at the broad level about what we do as an organisation to support communities. You know, we do that in different communities, how our brands support communities, what we do at a corporate level, we'll continue to do that. I'm excited about the sustainability agenda, what we do now. We've got a whole programme called Society 2030, so, which is all about DE&I, it's all about sustainability, and it's all about positive drinking. Those are our big 3 areas. And I'm excited about the work we're doing about that. People talked about, I think So talked about the NFL earlier, and the work we do around that, about positive drinking. I'm excited about that because it's the right thing to do in society, but it's also really good brand building. So I think overall, you know, it's easy to go, oh my God, it's really tough at the moment, consumer goods are tough, the markets are tough, consumers are having to make choices at the moment about what they buy, when they buy it, and being more judicious about their choices. And I think it just forces all of us to up our game and get better. And I think that's kind of cool. You know, we just got to get better. We've got to, in our case, we've got to keep reframing our portfolio. We're a big portfolio, make sure we've got the right portfolio, which is fit for purpose. And we need to make sure we really understand the shifting landscape and the ever-changing, the fast pace of the world that we live in. And that we are really up to speed with all of that. And I think if we do that, we've got those opportunities.
Well, thank you very much for your time and for your insight.
So